There we go. Well, that was frustrating. Checking to make sure that the stream's now running on all the platforms. It seems to be doing that now. Um, okay. Much better when you have less technical difficulties. I'm here to tell you that streaming is not easy, my friends. In fact, it is relatively tricky. I'm using Streamlabs, and there are a ton of YouTube videos that will tell you how to set it up. But it's still tricky. I don't care what he says. I will give big props out to the people that stream every day, because it is just not easy. Okay, so we are live everywhere. So hey, my name is Aaron LeBeau. I am a developer advocate at Couchbase, and they are a database company, and I am currently streaming, building some API stuff. Now, if you have been watching the previous streams and stuff, you'll know that I'm working on an ASP.NET application right now. It's a gamification engine. Gamification is the concept of rewarding people for our behavior modification, basically. So you want in video games, like in mobile apps, it's really popular to test currencies. So you may have like coins, and you may have all these different types of currency that you're using to entice your users to continue playing your game. And for other games like role-playing games, it's really popular for things like leaderboards, to be able to generate like who is going what. That's another popular use for gamification engines. But really, even last stream I was talking about it, Microsoft Learn. If you go to their website and you basically sign up for a learning path, they're giving you XP, and they're giving you achievements and rewards and stuff like that. That's all gamification. So I would like to build a gamification engine, and it turns out I'm going to stream building one on ASP.NET, and then eventually I'm going to build it on other platforms just to kind of compare. I'd like to do that. So at the end of last stream, we found that I'm going to put my blue light glasses on here too. What we were finding was that the Visual Studio 2022 beta for Mac is relatively not being the most friendly, to be honest with you. And I'm spending more time kind of working in that than I am coding, and that's not necessarily what the stream's designed to do. So I have decided to go back to Visual Studio 2019. So this is Visual Studio 2019 running on my same Mac. So this is the same code. Now I had to downgrade the code to ASP.NET 5. I'm not going to run on 6 right now because this IDE is not 100% compatible with that from what I can see. It seems like part of it is, but I'm not going to risk it. I don't want you guys to watch me just be frustrated on trying to figure out why certain things don't work. Instead, when you're building software, build the things on the things that are supported, right? That seems like it makes sense. So that's what we're going to do moving forward here. We're just going to play with the stuff that we know that works versus experimental, just see if we can get some stuff up and running. So where we left off yesterday was we were working on implementing the Couchbase service that would go through and give a bucket, a scope, and a collection. And the theory is that I could use this to go through and init the cluster for the SDK and get it to the point where I can pull data from a database versus just doing it willy-nilly, inside of just using mock data, basically. So that's not necessarily fun to use in mock data, right? So we've got a method here in our Couchbase service that just goes through and will get you the buckets scope collection. And that can be used by something called a repository eventually to go through and talk to the database to do particular things. We probably want to genericize this out, honestly, so that the repository doesn't have to do a lot of work, and that the services is basically doing most of the work, like adding documents and stuff. And the theory would be is that why would I want to duplicate that work in the repository? The repository should be running business logic, and the hope is that the service will do all the hard stuff. So getting a document will be something that we'll want to do inside the service, and then we'll build a repository that calls that. That's the goal today. So let's go through and review what we've got real quick here. I like to always go through and hit the build button and make sure that my builds are working. I am throwing out to Microsoft Edge. That's what we're going to be using for debugging. It is a version of Chrome, and it's okay. I don't mind Microsoft Edge. It's actually pretty cool. A couple different things I'll show you in Visual Studio 2019. Once we get debugging here and stuff, make sure our API still works. So I did tweak a couple things in the controller. I changed the controller signature so to be API v1, and that's really popular. When you're building APIs, you usually want to have a signature path so that if you change those APIs, you can do that. And so you'll see here, outside of that, it's really the same code. So I made a little tweak there so if I had to convert back and I had to do some code changes to do that, I wanted to go through, do a little bit of quality of life improvements on that. So let's go ahead and do this. Just double check to make sure our API still works. And we should see here, we still have our API that we literally left off with yesterday. Working, it's got a GUID. We've got some information we're sending with some created information. That's all mock. None of it's real. And I don't like that. So we would like to get some real information, or at least some information that doesn't come from embedded. Like, let's get some information from a database, for example. Do that. I'm going to open up my Couchbase admin console. And let's see here. Let's see if I can open this in Edge so that I can get it everything on one screen. That would be kind of nice, right? Or one window here. Let's do this. So I'm running Couchbase locally using the Mac version because I'm on a Mac Mini. And I'm on an M1 Mac Mini, and the Docker images don't support ARM yet. And so the easiest way then to do that is to basically just run it locally on your Mac. It will run in Rosetta 2, which is this translation layer that allows you to run x86 on an ARM processor, and it's fine for performance sakes. You'll see here I am running the latest version. We do have a bucket called gems, and if we go to scopes and collections, we should see that we have a default scope. And we have a collection called user profiles and a collection called _default. And we would like to eventually put our user profiles in that collection. That's our goal. Cool beans. So not only we've got a review here, we do got a controller. So let's go through and take a look at our feature. You'll see that because I'm on the older version of Visual Studio for the Mac, you should be able to see that I've got the fonts jacked up a lot more. That is just simply supported because of the fact that I am on the older version. If you remember, the latest versions kind of crashed that. So that's not necessarily cool, but let's see here. So now the problem is I want to use that also means that we can kind of use a couple other things going on here. So I do want to show you the controller real quick here. So this is how I changed the signature. So my route, I just added API/v1/controller. And that's what changed it, where yesterday we were just going the controller name, and now today when we go, you can see that it's telling us that it's got this API v1. And that way if you made a change to a certain amount of your routes and you had a v2 of the API, but you want to be backwards compatible, you could do that. And that's going to make it so you don't break your users by building an API. This is a very smart pattern to do, to version your APIs when you make changes and stuff. And make sure that you're not breaking your customers. And that's probably a pretty smart thing to do. Okay, so our controller goes through. It calls via mediator a get by ID. And our get by ID's got a handler and a request. It takes in a GUID and it returns something. Now we would like to get it to the point where this, instead of looking this up here, looks it up from the database. Okay, so that's our goal. But the real problem is that in order to do that, we got to add a document to the database and then look it up. So we're going to cheat a little bit on that. We're going to go in to here. That looks like a document to me right there, right? And so I should be able to just use the importer in Couchbase to import this document. Let's try that. Documents. And there is an importer. And I can just say I want to import this. I don't want a file. I think I may have to save this into a file real quick here. We could do that real quick. That won't take long at all. So let's get VS Code. That's get Kraken. That's not VS Code. Do a new window of VS Code. Bring that over so everybody can see it. So how am I going to inject this document into the database is the question. And I'm going to use a tool that's built into the console to do that. And that way when we test our code, we know that's going to work. So I'm making a new file. We're going to call it document.json. We're going to create a new text file. We're going to call it document.json. All right, save as. We'll save it to my desktop. The desktop, we'll just call this user profile John.json. And that should get us everything we need, because we won't need to make a document type right now because of the fact that that document, because of the fact that we're using collections, so that should be okay. So let's go ahead and go to our desktop and look for our, there's our user profile. Now I can say I want to parse it as a JSON lines, and the UUID, what's going on here? The import, let's try it again. And what we want to do is say it is in gems and it's in the user profile bucket. So see here, I had to say, where do I put the document that's in there. And then what I want to do is I want to say that instead of importing with there, why is it not letting me? That's really weird. Usually I get the field, or I can say what field I want to pull the ID from. Well, we're just testing, so I think this is fine. Why is it saying, why? Let's see here. It's saying that there's 0 information in here. There's 11 kilobytes of information in there. What? That's really weird. Did you see that? Where I was like, hey, this is not that at all. I'm not sure why it won't let me select a field, but I'm pretty okay with the way that's set up right now. Oh, it's still mad about something. Is it because we don't have this? Doesn't want brackets. Man, I do this all the time, and I don't know why doing something so simple would, I literally just imported a bunch of stuff from my, Connect talk that I'm having in a couple days. So I'm not really sure why the importer now is giving me a bad time. Let's go back to our file and add, oh, don't call me late for dinner. Thanks. There's a new category, software and game development you may be interested in. Oh. I'm also panned to the right audio. It's really weird. Check the input on that. Check 1, 2, 3. Check. Board says it's in the middle. But hey, thanks for that. I do appreciate that input. Let's see here. The audio on there. Don't call me late for dinner. Interesting. I did pan it a little bit more to the left. It was in the center, actually, so I'm not sure why. I'm just checking my outputs from the sound card. The sound card makes it sound all right. I wonder if there's something going on with the... I'm running through a gate and an EQ, and so I may have an issue where the gate is not... goes in mono, and then the gate brings it out stereo, but sometimes like the gate has to be rebooted. It does weird things, so apologize for that. I do see that it looks like it's. Is it getting better like that? I'm just looking at my outputs real quick of audio. It seems like it's a little bit better, but not perfect. I will try to fix that after the stream. Thank you. Let's see here. So I think what's going on with my JSON document is I may have to put some brackets in it to get the importer. I do remember that I don't think I've ever imported a single file before, a single record inside of a document. I'm almost always import a bunch. So let's see here. Let me try to put this in an array basically, so that the importer may be happier like that. Let's try that instead. Let's see here. There it is, JSON list. Now that looks a little bit better, and now I should be able to say the field value. There it is. So it turns out the importer wants it in as a list. I do appreciate that. It's that is annoying, so I'll take a look at it afterward. I might have to reboot the gate. It's been a while since I've done that. It is a relatively cheap hardware gate that I've had for many years, way too many years. I used to play guitar in a band, so used to have a lot of equipment from that I have been reusing on my stream. So if we look here, that is looking good. We've got this file. We can import it into the database, and that should get us data in. And let's see here then. If we were to go back to our buckets and go look at here, and then go look at our document, and there's our document. Yay, that means that we should be able to use our API to call it then. And that's a good thing. Take notes here real quick that newish category. I don't think it's gonna let me change. Oh, maybe it will let me change it. Software and game. Oh, it does. I guess it allows you to change on the fly. So I just changed the category. Thanks for that. Change category on the fly, it looks like. Hopefully that didn't kill the stream. And it looks like it's still up, so I think we're good. Excellent. Let's get back to some coding then. So here over in the Visual Studios, we've got the ability now to basically go through and in our service, we should have at least the ability to go through and get a scope, a collection, and a bucket. And we'll have to pass one in. Now the issue is going to be is we want to make sure that we can talk to Couchbase, and that'll be through this other method called this init method that goes through and makes it so that we can talk to the cluster. Now I know this is not going to be popular, but we're going to hard code the username and password in for the development for just right now, and then we're going to refactor that out to a config file. So that's for local development. Usually there's something in ASP.NET called these app settings, and you have different app setting files for, different configurations. And if you're just doing local development, I usually name one called local development. And if you hard code a username and password in there and it's just for local development, no crime, no foul, at least in my opinion. Now, if you're obviously doing this and you have a development environment that you're working with at work, and that's like in Azure or in Google or AWS, then don't hard code your passwords in there. Use a key vault. Get your passwords out via that. So, but for this, I think we're just going to hard code for right now, and then we'll go through and we'll add that in a little bit. And you also could, if you're building out, you could inject your username and password as part of your build pipeline. And that you could do, like, for example, in GitHub Actions. So in your GitHub Action, basically in your repo, there's a spot where you can embed your username and password and make it so people can't see it. And then when you build, the GitHub Action can pull that out and inject it in. And that at least makes it so that the username and password is not checked into code. Because if that's the case, then somebody can use a script to go through GitHub and find, all the username and passwords and then try to break into your stuff. And that's not necessarily cool. So it's not something you want to do. So with that, we have the service. So that's kind of explaining what our next steps are. So I think we need to go through and make another folder here. Let's go through and do that. So we're going to go through and add a new folder, and we'll call this repository. Repository. So we're going to make should we make an interface for this? That's the next question. Yeah, I am usually pretty lazy about this, and if I can base class it, I'm going to base class the crap out of it just to make it so I don't have to write the same code over and over again. We're kind of going down that pattern here with the domain. If we take a look here, we have like this base class that has some properties on it, and that way when we make new domain objects, we don't have to make those properties over and over again. It's just, to me, it's tedious. And honestly, it just gets down to code reuse when you can. Um, the problem is, do we have an idea of our concrete? I'm asking myself this now. Do I have an idea of the concrete implementation I want to do for this? For a repository right now. Uh, I think we could. I think we could because then we could mock it. Let's do that. Let's make a interface to start out with. Call this user profile repository, and then we'll make another one called the actual user repository, and then we'll make a mock afterward, and then we can run unit tests against that. User profile repository. And the very easy thing to do in C# is we want an inherit, so we're going to do this, and this will say user profile repository. And that should inherit from that interface. So now anytime we add a method over here, we'll have to implement it over on the other spot. So the thing we want to do to start out with is that we're looking for a get by ID. And so we would want to say, you know, technically speaking, what we probably want to do is have it where we have a method called find by ID, something like that, a generic method that we can then, technically speaking, probably even refactor out to a more I repository, because every document's kind of got an ID. And so that would get us, if we make these generic names, that's going to make it a little bit easier for us to refactor that out. And then we could possibly have some shared code in that and save ourselves a bunch of time and hassle. So let's see here. I think that that's the place that we should probably go first. So let's go through and make a probably a generic. We'll say that we're going to make a task of type T, and we'll do the implementation. Yeah. I'm starting to like this already. The more I think through this, of type T. Actually, the T would be. Well, let's like get ahead of ourselves here real quick here. Let's say we're gonna do a task of type T, and we're gonna bring back a get find by ID by document ID, and we're gonna say we're gonna type in or pass in a string of a document ID, and that's our method right there. So let's go through and refactor, and it's probably going to. We do have to pass this in via here. That should make it so that we have a generic. And so now what we can say is that, technically speaking, actually, let's rename this. To I repository. All repositories will have find document by ID. And we'll just rename this to I repository. I'll make another interface called user repository. I have that spelled wrong. The font is still ridiculously small, even though I have it jacked up. I think that's spelled right. Repository. And this will inherit from my repository of type user profile. And then what we'll do. So now, now we have it where, let's take a look at that, because that really makes it kind of interesting. So if we look at it, we're doing some interesting design here. Is that the theory would be is that our repository is say no matter what kind of repository we create, it's going to be a generic. We're going to have a find document by ID. Now, because of the fact that our repository inherits from this, what's going to mean is that my user profile repository is going to have a method that implements that task, but it's going to return a user profile. And by doing that, I've made my life a little bit easier. And that means that I can guarantee that I can, technically speaking, make probably an abstract repository that goes through and finds documents by ID, because that's a generic thing to do in Couchbase. We would only have to know, we'd have to know a little bit more about that actually. We'd have to know, now I think about it, this is not 100% the right signature if we're going to really super genericize this so that we can reuse the maximum amount of code. We would need to know the bucket name, the scope name, so string scope, the string collection, and string document ID. So, but the real problem is that these could be, technically speaking, optional, and they could be defaulted to the word default. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do it like this, and then what we're gonna say here is equal to default. Well, and by doing that, if you want to just take the defaults, if you know your stuff's stored in default, you don't have to pass those in. So that is a good implementation there of it. So now what we could do, because I'm getting super lazy about this, right? I could go through and make a generic repository that that goes through and gets it for all, because the fact that that's a generic method, versus having one for a user. And we can just inherit from that and only have the unique things in user inside that repository. That's the laziness that's coming out in me the more I think about this, because I'm trying to basically, I wouldn't say bend the rules of object-oriented programming, but get it to the point where I don't have to write the same kind of code over and over again. That just seems like it'd be a waste. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to make a base repository. So we're just going to call this repository. Our base repository is probably the best way to do it. So in base repository, we're going to say that we inherit from I repository of type T. That's going to be the issue, because we have to give it an implementation. No, we shouldn't have to give it an implementation. I think it's just mad because there we go. No, we shouldn't have to do this. We should be able to pass this in. Using do I even need the interface, technically speaking? That's the next question. This should be in the using statement. We would, technically speaking, use that in multiple spots. And let's see here. Let's bring that down here. And we would say, why are we getting with generics? Thinking about this for a second. Okay, so So I think what I could do, and so in C Sharp, there's something called a where statement in generics, where I could say where it has to be of type domain, T domain object. And by doing that, I could then allow it to pass it in. I think that that's going to work. So what I'm going to say here is that we're going to make this so that the repository is going to need to be T-domain. And we're going to then tell repository we're going to do T-domain. So that should be there. But then what we have to do is we have to say where T-domain is of type of domain object. No, domain object is in core. Domain base, that's what it's called. Not domain object. And then the only thing we'll have to fix is that the interface for our repository needs to be of type T-domain. And we'll think what we could do here is where the same thing where T domain is of type domain base. There we go. That is the design I'm looking for. And then this only issue is domain base, repository T domain. Oh, yeah, because we didn't fix this yet. This is got to be T domain. And this is spelled wrong. Or I just don't have a using to it yet. There we go. Hey, magic sauce, look at that. And so now we have an extremely lazy way to do this. We could basically make a base repository that's going to be an abstract class that we can kind of do an implementation here and then kind of just inherit from that and kind of make it so that the so when we want to use just basic things that we don't need to do like queries against the database of find unique kind of things, we can just use these methods that we already have. And so by doing that, we're going to shrink our repository specifics down for each type of document that we're going to store, because we need to store all kinds of things. We need to store quests and achievements and points and all these kind of things. User profiles is the easiest thing. So we're trying to set ourselves up for success here. We're trying to go through and set ourselves with some infrastructure that will grow with us a little bit. So of course this is mad because I'm not returning anything right now. I really need to return one of these user profile objects. And if I don't do that, it's going to be really, really kind of mad at me. So what we could do is just to get the thing, well, let's just do, I probably accidentally deleted the exception. So that'll keep it happy right there. So what I want to do real quick before I forget though is go back to user profile repository here and say that we're going to make this inherit from you can inherit from multiple things inside of .NET. Technically speaking, you only can inherit from one class, but you can inherit from multiple interfaces. So what we should be able to do is say that we're going to inherit from repository base, our repository base, which is we called a base repository. And we're going to say that this is going to be user profile. And then what we could do is we can pass in user profile. And we can comma this to also say that we're going to do a user profile here. And let's see, we don't need this anymore because technically speaking, it's saying that user profile, this doesn't meet the signature of it anymore. Oh, our user profile already does that, so we don't need to add the user profile to it. We just need to say that we need to do that. And let's see, what's it meant about now? It's the user profile can be a permanent T domain. And what? No, user profile is of type domain base object. Oh, I wonder if I should just make, well, I should probably make a... Yeah, we're going to run into a problem where the ID, it won't be able to get it because for each object it's unique. So to fix this, we would have to have something like this. We'd have to have a public string document ID. Because technically speaking, there's a metadata field, but to access the metadata field is not something that comes by the query by default, and we don't want to pull all the metadata fields in. So we're just going to kind of duplicate it. We don't care about that necessarily per se here. So what we're going to do is make a document ID there, and then what we don't need here is we don't need this field anymore. Now, user profile is of type domain base. So technically speaking, that should meet the requirements because it is of type of that. So let's see. User profile. The user profile can be used as type T domain in the generic T domain. There's no boxing conversion or type parameter for conversion from user to domain base. Yeah, they're technically. I think I need to use an interface for this versus an abstract class. And I think that that's going to make it so that I can pass it in, and I can just say that there's an iDomain, and that this implements that interface. So let's do that. Let's make an interface here. And I don't know why Visual Studio for Mac says new class, but then you can select interface from new class, but it does. That's how it works. So we have iDomain base here, and all we need to do here is just copy all this stuff in. Here to say that we need to do that. We don't need the word public because interfaces in C# don't use access modifiers. That's up to the implementation to do that. So you would probably get a compiler error if you don't do that. So that's good for that. So then what we're going to say is domain base implements this interface. Domain base. And we're getting into some pretty advanced, well, I would say advanced, at least not in my opinion, advanced C# concepts. But and we shouldn't need that because, well, we could say, but iDomain base already implements that interface, so it's kind of a given, to tell you the truth. I don't know. I think that does work because of inheritance. What we should be able to say in our here, instead of saying domain, we would say iDomain base. What's the man about now? I don't think that wait, what? Oh, let's see here. Base repository where T-domain is of type iDomain. The T-domain cannot be used as a parameter T-domain. The generic method of T-domain. There's no boxing conversion type from T-domain to T-domain. T-domain base. I think we just need to go through and fix this because I don't think we need a generic anymore. Because we can just say everything is domain based, then we can get rid of the need for the generic. Let's see here. So we're going to say no matter what, the repository only returns domain-based objects. And they all have to be from this interface. And then what we should be able to do here is just say this is iDomain base. That should be fine. We just have to fix iRepository. iRepository is already fixed. So user repository should be user profile. User profile implements an interface. So who is mad? You are mad. Why are you mad? Oh, because we didn't fix this. And now everybody should be happy. We should be happy here. We should be happy here. We should be happy here. And we should be happy not here. And let's see here. Why is this not happy? User profile does not implement member I repository. The base repository does. Do we have to really tell it that we have to use? This is really stupid if we have to just tell it this. Document ID, bucket, scope, and collection. Huh? And we need to tell base repository also to be async. And that should hopefully fix us. So I probably should mention that I have not done C# in quite a while. Why is there a period in there? There should be a period in there. So we want to get a... Wait, what? Why is this being so silly? I don't think this ID is working right because it shouldn't be like that at all. It should just be implement method. Cannot convert. What is it saying now? Cannot convert user profile to GEMS core domain object user profile. Where is our repository? I've been working in Kotlin for quite a while here, doing some mobile development. So I've been looking for an excuse to get back to doing some more C#. And so that's why I'm kind of doing this stream, is just an excuse to not lose my C# skills. I already have domain objects, so I shouldn't need this here actually. User profile is of type I domain object. Where's I user profile? That is 100% right. I guess, do I need the separate interface, or can I walk with a single interface? Is the next question. No, because when I inject in, I need to inject in a user profile repository, not a I repository, because otherwise I'd have multiple implementations, and when I go to do DI, I won't have, a unique interface to attach that to get direct interface in. So why is it complaining now? User repository does not implement interface member repository. Find document by ID. I do too. It's right there. Oh. Is this what we have going on here? that's what's going on. Where's base repository? We have to mark it as virtual. Virtual would make it so that it could be overridden. What's it mad about now? Yeah, we don't have to worry about that per se. Let's close that. We don't need it anymore. Is our repository happy? Base is happy. This is happy. User profile, are we happy now? Overhead's happy, but it's still not happy that user profile repository does not implement interface member find document by ID. Find document ID is right there. Can I implement our repository? Because it does not have a match and return type of task user profile. It literally has a right there. I mean, it's right there. Let's try doing a build and see if it's just the IDE being a jerk. Maybe I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself here too. See the nope. So the IDE is still saying that I'm wrong. And if I just take this away, of course it would be fine. But the problem is I won't have my unique implementation then. Because this is satisfied that it's inheriting from there, which inherits from I user repository. But the problem is I want to make this so that it's unique to I user profile. Oh. This should implement repository. So that would replace this with whatever it implements. Something that's based off of iDomain base. And so if we go look here, that would make this correct. And then our base repository is just basically also implementing that at any time. It doesn't care. It's just going to return an iDomain base. I still think I should use a generic there. I've obviously got something silly going on here in my pattern of this. Let's see here. Let's see. So user profile, base repository, user profile. Base repository then would implement a user profile instead of iDomain base. So it would swap that out. No, it would not, because oh yeah. Yeah, we don't want to use this interface. The more I think about it, the problem is going to be is we use the interface, we won't get the full properties back. We have to basically use the we're gonna have to use the abstract class. Oh, we have to say this. Because otherwise this is gonna fall apart on us. It needs to be this really. Let's fix it where key domain base is of type domain base. Let's fix it properly versus trying to hack this, because that's or at least I'm going to do that, because I'm starting to realize more and more that this is not a good thing. I'm gonna get myself into a point where I won't be able to be flexible enough that I want to be. So this is T domain base, and I repository is gonna be T domain base, where T domain base. Where's my I repository at? where T domain base is domain base. So we're basically saying in here, we would then bring in anything that's based in T domain base. Anything that inherits from T domain base should be legal here. We have to fix I repository because that should be a T instead of an I. T stands for generic, just so you know, in C#. So we're going to say here we have a T where we equal T domain. We're going to make that as our I interface. So then we'll say base is going to also implement that, and we'll return something based on that. We'll have to basically take in something on the I private read-only I Couchbase service. I'm gonna call this Couchbase service, and then we'd have to inject that in here. I Couchbase service, and then we'd say here I Couchbase service equals Couchbase service. Then what we should be able to do is say var result equals I Couchbase service get collection scope, and we're gonna say what we need from here is the bucket name, the scope, and the collection. So we'll just say bucket scope collection, and we have to wait that. So because this is a I don't think we need to make that virtual, to tell you the truth. Let's write some code here and see if we can get this working via that. So once we have the Couchbase service, we should be able to say result dot, and we have item 1, 2, and 3. Item 1 should be the bucket. Item 2 will be the collection. And item 3 is the item 2 is scope and 3 is collection. In fact, I don't remember if this is in C# 8 or 9. But in those, where is the Couchbase service at? We should be able to give those names so they don't come back with item. I think what you're able to do is right here. Can I say bucket equals equals tuple return. Oh, this works right now. We can go through and refactor that later. I don't want to get like a kitten here and get distracted too much. So let's go back to our base repository, try to get something working here. So that should get us results. Well, we're going to say var bucket equals result dot item. Why is the total? Oh, because bucket's already passed in. We need to change these to be bucket name and stuff. So let's refactor that. Rename to bucket name. Refactor this to scope name, and we'll refactor this to collection name. All right, that seems better. Now we should be able to say bucket equals result item 1, and then the second thing passed back is the scope, so we could say var scope equals result item 2. Actually, I think we only need the bucket because we could say bucket get or do we have to get the we have to get out of the collection. So I don't think we need the bucket actually. I think we can just say var collection equals result item 3. And then we should be able to say collection dot get I don't want to keep a. I want to get a document. Or is it out of the bucket? So the item to the get. Item 1. In Couchbase Lite, I can just ask the database object for a document, and it'll just return it. Let's go look at what the API is for that. Docs, not docs.microsoft.com. That's the wrong website. So when you have questions about how the API works, it's just best to go to the documentation, right? So let's go do that. So we can find it in SDKs. We're going to go into the .NET SDK. And what we're looking for is how to get a document. Working with data. I don't want that. I just want to get a document back. Let's go with the core basics. No, I don't want a sample app. Just show me how to get a document. So it's called get async. And it passes in the document ID, and you'll get a document back from that, it looks like. So that looks like that's what the API says. So now we can go back to Visual Studio and do that. So what we should be able to say is that was right. So we have a collection. And then what we should be able to do is say var document equals collection await collection dot get async, and this should get us a, or pass in the document ID, and then what type of object is document. It's only a key value pair though. I want it in JSON. Because if I do it in key value pair, then I have to can I just do it to JSON is the question. Without using query. So let's see here. Here is the ability to retrieve full document. So they're saying here, I don't want the content as string though, I want it as a JSON object. So I can just deserialize it back. Wait, I wonder if there's a toJSON method on that. Let's go check. It's been a while. Document to, I have a document to string and a content as question is, can I say content as user as t domain base? so used to Kotlin. I do believe that that's what's going to work, and I do believe that that would serialize it back down. But the only way to find out is we'd have to go through and run it. We do have our document now in the database, so I think that that's going to work. And that I should check real quick I should check our sample repo. So I wrote this a long time ago. I'm not signed in. Turd. Signing in GitHub's hard. Because I have multi-factor authentication, all kinds of other stuff on it. Let's see. Bring a different window open over here. Take a look at an example of that in Couchbase examples of ASP.NET. And I wrote this, so I mean, I know there's setup database. Look at the controller. What does it do? So it does work like this. So you can just say content as and then that. So I just wanted to make sure. But it looks like that does absolutely work. Because I literally wrote this on May 26th. So that's the reason why I don't remember the syntax. As I don't remember 100% the API. So that makes sense. So that should work. So now that we've got this working, we've got a super generic way of handling this. And technically speaking, I can recall this over and over again. Now I just have to fix this crap. So would have to be, this would have to be T domain base. Why does it matter here? Where T domain base. So that, and then we just need user profile is gonna say it is profile. It is. It is literally of type that type. It literally right here. We inherit from that. We are one of those things. That is super frustrating. Oh. Duh. What am I thinking? That's the issue. I don't need to give it to generic because there's no methods. I call that need to know about user profile. There's no generic needed for it. Oh, good lord. Boy. I'm losing my C# badge of honor here. Oh, that's working. So holy crap. That's pretty cool. We're about an hour into the stream, and I do believe we have a repository for the user working. To the point where we could basically, if we could figure out how to register Couchbase service and these repositories, I believe we would be able to go through and get that document back. So that's gonna be our next thing. That's a little bit tricky. So what's gonna have to happen is we have to go into the ASP.NET configuration and start doing some registrations. And that something that I do believe I already have support for. Let's go check. This is a little bit different than before, because before we did that in program, but now we're going to do that in startup instead. So I do believe that we're adding controllers, we're adding validators, we're adding Swagger, we're adding mediator. So after mediator, I think this is where we want to add it. Might have to look this up in the ASP.NET documentation because it's been a while. Actually, let's just put it in here. We'll just say add in interface implementations. And so what we're going to say is that there should be services dot add transient. And now what we should be able to do is say that we have a iCouchbase service. We want to implement Couchbase service. And that should be it. That should add in Couchbase service. So now anytime a class has Couchbase service in its constructor, it should automatically inject that in. This is called dependency injection or constructor injection. So by theory, when we go to our repository, our base repository, where it says it needs an iCouchbase service, that should work. And when we even go down to user profile repository, it's also taken in this iCouchbase, right? So all this magic should work with that one line of code. And then we should be able to add in our next one, which is iServices add transient, because we need, we're also going to need a type of user repository. And we need to tell that where we want to use the user repository. There. Why is it mad about this? Oh, I have to give it the generic. Nope. Wait. You shouldn't care. The signatures told that, right? I guess not. So it just needs to be a user profile. Why are you ejecting garbage in for me? Doesn't know where user profile is, so I'll have to probably tell it to use domain objects. And let's see here. Make this kind of readable. Not see why it's bad. Let's see here. Add transient service type or implementation. The type user profile repository cannot be used as a type parameter T implementation in a generic. Where the heck is user profile repository? Oh, I didn't tell it to inherit from it. I didn't tell it that it implements this with user profile. That's the issue. Why is this squiggly line there? Oh boy, Visual Studio. Sometime. Wait, what now? Oh, it's not user profile. It's user. All right, we're not going to care about that squiggly line because I don't think that's an issue. I think that's just a bug where the IDE is doing that. Let's just do a build. We'll see if the builds gods say that this is wrong. I don't think it's wrong. I think that that little squiggly line is a bug in Visual Studio where it's telling me something is not right when it doesn't know any better. It should know better, but it doesn't. Nope. Oh. Well, that's so it wasn't that at all. This is called document ID now. Document. Holy cats! I think we finally got this to build. Now, if this is the case, what we should be able to do is call this from our handler, and magic sauce. This should just all work. So the build worked. So that little squiggly line is wrong. There's nothing wrong. The build just worked. It built successful. So, boy, I know that was a lot of work to get us there, but we're getting there. So let's see here. So we need to start Couchbase service. Oh yeah, we didn't have this implemented yet, so we're not 100% there yet because we need to implement this. I thought we implemented this though. Oh, this is the mock. This isn't the real thing. Never mind. Let's close the mock for right now. I was like, wait a minute, didn't we already implement this? So Couchbase service should go through in a init. And then go through and set up the cluster, and then obviously go through and anytime you want to get the buckets and scopes and stuff, it should do that. So the theory, and then the repository does that. So the only issue now that we have is that we need a way to knit the database. That's going to be the only issue now, is that when we start, we need to go through, get a copy of the database, and then tell it to, actually, I have the answer to this already. I wrote this in the example I was showing you guys. Crap, I just opened Safari by accident. My dock is way over on the other screen. If you're wondering why I always struggle opening things and I can't always see, I've got a really big wide monitor, so I've split it in half. The stream's in half. The other half is like web browsers that I have open. GitHub.com. Nope. Now I think about this, I did this before. I did this in the example for ASP.NET. Don't remember how I did it, but I remember I started the database before the APIs would start over here. Let's see here. How did I do this? I want to say, if I remember right, I did in startup. I had something that would go through. Yeah, so right here, add transient. Oh, that's right. I was using the Couchbase helper that automatically sets up the collections. Oh, that's right. And all you have to do is have the configuration set in your configuration file. Well, and I think I just made a Couchbase config object. Let me see here. Models. Yep. And bucket name. Oh. There's a lot more information in there than I had before. The problem is you can have multiple collections and scope names. I don't know if that's really needed in the config. The more I think about that, I'm not sure if that's right. But anyways, let's go look at that code again, because I think we should just be able to take this. I mean, I literally wrote this code. Let's see. So what I had come up with is that there's a Couchbase section out of the config, and you configure a Couchbase config into that. And this usually, I think, will start Couchbase. Yeah, right here. So I have this thing called set a database once and everything is set up and running, and integration tests need to make sure the database is record for running. So what this does is Set up database once everything is set up and running. Integration tests need this working before running, hence running it synchronously. So I think this was having them run for interface tests versus not for interface tests. They guarantee that the database server was always up and the database service is always up and running. And then when ASP.NET closes, just to go through and make sure it removes it. So there's a database service in here. What is the database service? I thought if I remember right, though, the database service just goes through and makes the buckets. I don't think it does anything more than that. It's the cluster provider. Oh, I think I do remember this now. If you pass it in, that stuff into the config, it goes and gets you those things. They're provided by the Couchbase service. Ooh. I don't think that that's going to be a good idea because if I remember right, that needed the collection. And we can have many different collections. Let's go look at the development settings. Yeah, right here. See, it only allows a single collection name. And, you know, we're going to store different documents in different collection names. I don't think that that's going to work for us, folks. I don't think that that's a good idea. I think we're just going to manually connect to the Couchbase cluster. But the problem is we don't want to connect every time if it's not already there. So we're probably going to have to do a little bit of work in our Couchbase service to guarantee that the init only happens once. But we can borrow some of this code. This is not a complete waste. The theory is that this startup code is really good. I remember I'd researched this for a little while of how to do this in ASP.NET and do it in a way that made sense. Right here. This code right here is the this is the cat's meow right here. This is the code we want to borrow because we can basically tell the database server to run once only and get it all set up and get it in memory. So that's what we want to do. So we would do that for our Couchbase service instead. So I think I call it database service in this other app, but in here we call it Couchbase service. And what we'd want to do is we'd want to be able to get the init cluster right here. This is what we want to. We want to be able to get this up and running so that the cluster is set and not null. That's what we want to do here. Awesome. Well, I think that this is absolutely possible now. So what we want to do is we'll need to get the Couchbase service out from inside of our startup. So in startup, where did I do this at? So this is right before we set up redirection and stuff. So where is redirection? Right here. So here we want to set up Couchbase service to connect to the cluster. And then we'll also have to the only thing that they have here is they are using some kind of, they do give us like a lifetime service that guarantees that all this stuff gets disposed properly. And that sounds really nice. I'm just reading here that that's what it does when you add in the Couchbase config is it adds in the it adds in all the magic sauce to that. I mean, we could probably just dispose that ourselves. We could do yeah, we could do that ourselves. So we can make an implementation of iDisposable. Well, let's get this up and running first, then we'll implement. I don't want to, once again, I'm getting like a kitten here where I'm just doing too many things at once. Let's try to solve one problem at a time here. So let's see if we can get this registered and see if we can get the cluster creating itself. Or creating it so we can talk to the cluster. Then we'll worry about how to manage memory properly. All right, let's see here. So, right here, I think is a good spot to... Oh, let's put it up, yeah, up here. So what we're going to say is there is something called app lifetime. So where do I get the lifetime variable from, though? How did I get that? Oh, just another variable that you can add into the signature of this method right here. So it looks like there's an override that allows you to have it. So we can say we want the application, we want the web runtime, and we want the I post lifetime. There we go. Now that we have that, what we should be able to do here is say app lifetime app life. Boy, tells us it's just not helping me out here. Of course, it tells us this isn't going to bring anything up. Jeez. Man, so unuseful. That's really frustrating when, do I have to build to get the IntelliSense to work again? Come on. Why are you now... Wait, what? Now the... Boy. Alright, let's go fix Microservice. It says Microservice is broken somehow. Why are you recording? What does it say recording? Oh. That should fix that. Try this again. I don't know why the hell it says it's recording. There's nothing to be recorded, but... I'll have to talk to the development team about that, because by theory, collections are like the ability to have multiple tables, like in a relationship database, right? And so there'd be a pretty big limitation if you only can pass in one collection. You should be able to pass in multiple collections and say, look, I want to be able to get, you know, these 5 scopes and these 5 collections out of this bucket. You know, I don't know if maybe that's what they're working on next. I'm not sure. Let's see here. So app, like my indentation's not working anymore either. No IntelliSense. Look at that. Nothing. Maybe try to close it and reopen it and see if it decides that it's going to be better. Of course, indentation still broke. Does app work? No IntelliSense. I mean, this is a fresh open. Nothing. Does it build? I mean, if you build successfully, I mean, I'm sorry, the IntelliSense should work. Rosalind should be able to look up and find the things that it's looking for. Boy, that is frustrating. Kind of, that's why you use an IDE, right? Is to get IntelliSense. When IntelliSense doesn't work, you start to lose the value of why you're using it in the first place. So I happen to have the API next to me, so I can manually type this in, I guess. I'm just getting flustered because of the fact that the IntelliSense is not working. Of course, that API works, but it couldn't tell me what that was. So we need to go through and get the database, or the Couchbase service. So we're going to say var, oh, for freak's sake, and the and the dension's not working either. Boy, IDE, you're just cruising today. So we're going to say app dot, and of course, no telesense here again. And what, you don't know the keyword var now? Wow. Wow, what universe do you live in where you can't figure out that var, the keyword of how to make a variable, is... Woo! So what we're saying is that we want to get a reference to the Couchbase service. So of course var, it said it couldn't find var, but now var just works. So that's not helpful at all. Man, I don't know. I mean, I've restarted it. It still does not. It is still acting up pretty bad. Let's see here. So then from there we could just say, oh, we got to get the configuration. That's right. So we had to pull the configuration out. And I think that we can I think there's there is a no, I can hard code it here for right now, I guess. And then if that works, then we'll work on getting this in the configuration file. Baby steps, right? So we can say Couchbase. That's just not working either. Oh boy. No IntelliSense. Oh wow. Wow. That's really great. So now I have to open up the R file to find the actual name of the method because I don't remember it. It's this, what I want to call. So no IntelliSense, just red stuff. I guess I could try, what is it? There's supposedly a keyboard shortcut you can do for this. There it is. Huh. So that's really interesting. Control spacebar does work. I know that from Xcode, and I think that's also a keyboard shortcut here. So I guess that does work, but usually you can just hit period and it's supposed to come up. But it looks like Control and spacebar is going to have to be what I do. So the init cluster, I don't remember what it takes in, and of course it's not going to do it by hand. And I have to then see the little window that tells you the variable names in the order. Super helpful when it comes up. Garbage when it doesn't. Absolutely garbage when it doesn't. Which means now I have to go back here, look and say, okay, it's a Couchbase config I need to pass in. So I need to make a new one of those. New Couchbase config. And of course, that's not going to tell me what I need there, which means I have to go now look at the signature of this. Guys, man, this has got to get better because this is, well, I hope the next release this gets better because this is terrible, right? If I have to open a bunch of files, what's the use of having this? I might as well just use VI or Vim. Super frustrating. And I think I can just use localhost and 8091. And then username, we're going to go with the default one. And then our parenthesis. Because let's make this so we can read it a little bit easier. Couchbase config doesn't have. I wouldn't know that because the IntelliSense didn't come up to tell me, and I know I wrote it, but I don't remember. It's cluster URL, username, password. Oh, there's no constructor on it. Oh, for frick's sakes. So used to Kotlin. And of course, I'm going to have to say cluster URL equals this. username, because it won't tell me what I need, and then I have to say password. What? Couchbase service may be no here. If Couchbase is now, are you happy? And this is not the, boy. Nothing working. No indentions, no IntelliSense without hitting control spacebar. That is really super aggravating today. Maybe I've just been doing this too many days, and having to fight the IDE more than code is not helpful when you're trying to actually do something. So that should work. By theory, what this should do is this should go through, register the Couchbase service, put the configuration. We can pull this from the configuration file eventually. We're just going to do it like this because this is on my local machine only right now. Promise you we will fix this beforehand. And that should go through and wire up the service. The service then should go through and pick this up. And magic puppies, kittens, and rainbows, hopefully. So we're not done yet, though. Before we test it, well, one, we've done a lot of changes, but that should, by theory, get Couchbase service up. So now the last thing we have to do is actually use this stuff, all the stuff we just wrote. So now what we should be able to do is in here, this is what we're returning, right? And this is not what we want to do. This is garbage code. We should change this out. So instead, we should eject in a user repository. Boy. And no IntelliSense whatsoever. So I have to manually hit that. User profile. Repository. Ooh. Okay, so let's do a private. Boy, man, this thing is just being like turd today. The indention's not working. What's going on here? What did I do to deserve this, IDE? Why do you hate me so much? You obviously do. I'm trying to be nice to you. And let's make it so we can see more code. Private read only. There we go. You can say boy, the intention's not working. It's really just frustrating. Can't make a recommendation there. Why? And so let's see here. So now what we should be able to do is say if, actually we shouldn't even be able to do if. We should be able to say var user profile equals have to manually type that in is so terrible. And request dot ID equals await. What's the matter about now? Oh, we'd have to give it the bucket name. So the bucket name, good call here. That's a really good point. Boy, we should probably have these only. Probably should have some kind of config service that does this eventually. But let's hard code these right now, and then we'll probably have to build a config service to get these back. The bucket name was user profile. The scope was underscore. No, the bucket was gems, wasn't it? What's in the web page? Let's go back and take a look. Gems, default, and user profiles. That's the three things we need. Gems, default, and then user profiles. But the signature is what I'm looking for. The document ID must be first. So it's request.id. And what's mad now? And then return. And that should return a user profile already, right? But it could be no, I think. So it may be mad. It may not be mad. Well, we'll see what happens here. We could probably should throw a try catch in there eventually, but let's just put a breakpoint in here and see what happens. Actually, what we really want to do is get a breakpoint probably in the repository itself, the base repository, because everything's going to go wrong here. Really, I mean, that's literally where it's going to go wrong. We know that already, right? So if we think it's going to go wrong here, let's put a breakpoint in right here and just take a look at what. Well, actually, let's take a look at, because that should get the information back. So let's look at it. Also, oop, nope. Look at we already have something going on here. We're already getting some kind of defect, or it's not working. I have a feeling that probably what we should have did was breakpoint startup and look at where we add in this right here to see whether or not we're getting connected or not. So a init cluster, let's see if a init cluster is working. That's the better thing to take a look at first. Yeah, because we got to figure out, like, we added a lot of code in, so we had to figure out where the something to be breaking, where it's going to be breaking is right here. So let's start with the core basic and try to see if we can get the cluster back or not. Although we should have saw this. I don't see that error. You know what? Hell with it. Let's just run and see what happens. I'm feeling dangerous. Let's get dangerous. From Dark Reading Duck. We can see here. There's our document ID. Let's get that. Go into the Swaggers. Try this out. See if we crash and burn. So our breakpoint should fire instead. Okay, so let's go into this. Okay. Let's just go ahead and hit continue because that should get us back to here. Oh, wait, what do we got here? User profile controller cluster is no. Please run in a cluster method first. So the cluster is not getting connected because we're getting the cluster is no error when we try to talk to the database service. So that was my fear, is that this is somehow not connecting. So that means we need to go into Couchbase service and figure out why it's not starting. Which means we need to go into here, net cluster. need to do a try catch on this and see what's going on here. Do I have an iLogger in here at all? Yeah, we need to add an iLogger of type Couchbase service logger. So the logger should be built into .NET. And when you're trying to figure out what's broken in your stuff, this is a great way to do it. Private read only iLogger of Couchbase service logger. All I want to say is logger. All right, that should get us a logger that we can then use. We should be doing here. Now scroll's not working? Really? Look at this. Now the editor is to the point where the scroll bar doesn't work at all. I'm scrolling, you can see the thing going, but I don't see it moving down at all. Wow. Look at this. See the scroll bar on the side moving, but yet this doesn't? That's some jank right there. Oh, man. Ooh, boy. I don't know what's going on. Why now I can't scroll. Page up and page down works, but mouse scrolling no longer works. Even though the bar moves, the cursor does not. Let's close the editor again and see if maybe if we open the editor another time, if it fixes it or not. I don't know. There, now it's fixed. Scrolling works again with the mouse. Ooh boy. Ooh boy. Alright, so here what we should be doing is a try catch. But attention's not working. Boy. The indentation not working is just driving me crazy today. I don't know if it's just I'm having a rough day or what, but boy, that's really aggravating. And hey, but look at this. IntelliSense decided to start working again. That's pretty great. We want to log an error. And look at this. The little window's popping up now that tells me what the method name is. That is so useful. When it doesn't work, it's terrible. Error. Let's do this. We're going to say error ex.message, and then we'll say also stack trace. This will tell us where it's broken. So if the cluster can't connect for some reason, like the cluster is not answering or something like that, we should get a message back, error message on that, and then we can go through and figure out why it's happening. So let's go ahead and put a breakpoint there. It is my guess we are going to throw in an exception. And so it's my guess we'll hit that there and we can look at what the message in the stack trace says. Gut feeling. So it's trying to bring the swagger up. But the weird thing is, this should have happened during app startup. Huh. I'm a little kind of concerned about that because this should have ran. It should have ran during startup, right? We're telling it to run lifecycle here. Is the Couchbase service come back as null? Oh. Oh. Is it basically not registered yet? It's registered up here. If that's what's going on. Are we basically not getting the transient added fast enough, so when we go check the Couchbase service, it's not up. It can't grab it from the dependency. No, it's there. Okay, so it's there. Interesting. Okay, so that means that we should be able to hit um well, let's put a breakpoint there. Tell it to continue. Okay. Let's go try talking to the cluster. Doesn't throw an exception. How does it not throw an exception? So we're not throwing an exception yet. And so that's not null. These should be is add transient singleton though. Ooh. No. Add transient should ASP.NET err. Err. I'm an idiot. It's my fault. These need to be a singleton. It is falling out because I told it to register wrong. Not add transient. Can't be a transient. It's got to be add singleton. Add singleton. Oh boy. That's my fault. Well, that should hopefully fix our bug. So it turns out the only reason why it was null was because the fact that it kept creating a new one is my guess. Yeah, let's see. Because we're not throwing an exception. Well, this is throwing an exception. I don't know who's doing this, though. That's in debug core. I don't think that's me. We're going to have to figure out what's causing that. But I don't think that that's my... It could be my code. But if it's there, we would get the error in the console. We would get some kind of... We should get some kind of... Unless we're not getting verbose logs. That could be... well, let's go through and see if our code works. Because it's getting close to ending here. So let's go take a look at our database. We have this record. Let's see. Well, I've got like 3 Swagger windows open. I don't need 3 Swagger windows open. Just need one. Let's try this out. Let's go here. We should probably also add a try catch here. Ooh, that's taken a while. Oh, nope. We got a server 500 error. Something blew up. All right. Well, actually, we should probably handle this in the user repository. Where is the user repository at? Figure out why the user repository is blowing up now. Which would be base repository because it's just inheriting the method because it's just generic from that. Let's go take a look here. Let's try debugging here. This is where we should probably have a logging statement and log that somewhere because this is where it's probably going to break. All right. We're at least getting this far. Ooh, I saw an error. Cluster is null. Cluster is not null, though. Weird. Do I have to do a clean? Can this throw an exception? So this is using the decompiler to decompile the .NET code down to figure out what it's calling. And I was hoping that there'd be like an exception list of things that they would throw if the error is happening, so I could see what exception I could handle to figure out why this is not connecting. For right now, I'm going to see if I can put a breakpoint after and see if the cluster is being created here or not. Is my cluster URL wrong, maybe? Boy, do I remember running into this when I did this thing for the other project? Is that what's going on here? What's the URL? It should be... It is. It's my fault. Again. Where am I passing in the configuration? It's in startup. I don't have to put the port in. The port's for REST and the management API, not for the cluster. It should be this. The port's what's probably confusing it. Silly boy tricks are for kids. And is it up? It seems like it's up. Let's check the cluster. The cluster is not. Is it not null? It does not seem to be null. It seems to have all kinds of crazy stuff inside of it. That is not a null thing. Let's continue on our merry way here and see. Now, if we run this, what happens? Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. IDE is not coming up. It just says loading. I have a feeling that it hit a breakpoint and the IDE is not throwing me to it. That's the only breakpoint I have. Huh. Hmm. Just getting a loading now message. And nothing else. All right. Let's stop this. We know the cluster is no longer the issue. So let's go in and put a breakpoint here. See if we're making it to here. And then we'd have to put a breakpoint in the Couchbase service. Let's do this and see what happens. Our bucket name was Gems, capital. So when, oh great. So when the IDE, when I told it to stop debugging, it didn't stop it. Kestrel's still running somewhere. And so when I tried to run it a second time, it just blew up. That's great. Which means there's probably some .NET process still running on the Mac that I'm going to have to manually kill. I only see one running at 130 megabytes of RAM. Doesn't remember my breakpoints that I put in. Doesn't remember my breakpoints. Alright, so it's hit my breakpoint. So let's see what happens. So we're going to hit continue. This should go into the service. We're at our bucket. So let's go to the next line. The bucket return. Okay, so we got a bucket. Then we get scope. Scope came back. Do we get a collection? Collection came back. So we all three of them. All right, so let's go next. Return those. Okay. So by theory, result should be item 1, bucket 2, scope 3, collection. Exactly like I thought. Okay. And so now so we've got a document. So I think what's happening is probably the typecast that's not working. There's our document. shoot. It needs to know that it's a user profile. It doesn't know that it's a user profile. This is where it's going to kill it, I bet. No, there's the document. It's working. Wait, what's no on this though? Something's no. Document ID is no because it comes back as a string. And I have it set as a GUID, I bet. That's working. API works! Yay! Dun, 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 dun. Didn't do anything. Just debugged it a little bit. We still have an error where the document ID is not coming back right. Document ID is because it's in the document wrong. That's why. Document ID. Huh. Well, look at that. Let's run this a second time. Take out some breakpoints. Go back to the Swagger. Now document ID is working. Let's see how fast this is if we run it again. It should be that fast. Let's refresh the web page. And by theory, Couchbase should have it cached in memory by now, the document. So the document should be almost instantaneous. And that's pretty instantaneous. Folks, we have an API working. Well, a long road we went down today. Oh man, did we go into the toolies a little bit? For those that don't know what that means, that's like in the weeds. So what did we do today? Boy, we did a lot. We went through and got we modified our Couchbase service to go through and talk to the database, and also we put in a single method that would go in and we got it init up and running so they can initialize and talk to the database, and then we also got it so that we can get the buckets and stuff back. We need those to get data out of them. And then we went through and made a repository kind of pattern here. We have a base repository that just goes and finds things from the database. Just says, hey, you know, give me some documents. So the base repository has a little bit too much information about Couchbase's side of it for my liking. Really, what should probably happen is we should probably ask the Couchbase service for a document and have it understand how Couchbase works. And we should just pass in that. And what should be in the repository is more business logic and less how the database stores things. Just trying to think of like, how do I protect myself for long term? So I think what we're going to do next week is go through and refactor this a little bit, make it so that we don't get the buckets and stuff back. Instead, we'll make another method on the Couchbase service that just will get documents back and save documents, for example. And then we should be able to create new documents, and we should be able to get documents back. And so then, you know, we'll only have, our goal is to get the first 4 CRUD methods, and then once we do that, oh man, the API gets way easier to start building because you have like some code you can go look at of like how to do CRUD, right? So that's the theory is once we get this done once, the rest of it becomes kind of pretty easy. It's just a rinse and repeat on the process. But we did quite a bit today. We went through and got our repositories all figured out from a standpoint of we've got now a user repository that is a generic of that implements the iUser repository, which implements iRepository, which basically we're using an abstract class to kind of get the maximum amount of reuse. There's going to be a point where like I want a certain user base and their email address, right? Well, that's not something that's generic. Not every object has that. We won't be able to use the repository anymore, the generic one, to get that. That'll be a custom method inside of the user repository. That's what we should do next week. So we'll implement how to get the user by their email. We'll have to add something called indexing to be able to find that document, and we'll be able to implement the query service to be able to go through and say, hey, I need to query, find me the document that has this in it in this collection, and that should be pretty interesting. And that will be where we, like I said, we won't be able to use the base repository anymore. We'll have to add that method onto the iUser repository and the regular user repository for that. And that'll get us the ability to search users by email, which is more likely what's going to happen. We probably won't have their user GUID. More likelihood they're going to log into the system and their username is their email address, and that's what we can use to find the record. But we have an API up and running, folks. We have data coming from a database. And so I will give myself a mini golf clap. That is pretty good. We do need some cleanup. We need to get the configuration stuff into the web config and get it, or the app settings.config, instead of having it hard coded. We need to take a look at lifecycle to make sure that we are destroying things when ASP.NET goes down. So that we return memory and stuff. That's a real important thing. Get rid of all those objects. Make sure that they close clean and that we don't have any kind of data corruption because we're not closing the SDK properly. Not that I think that would happen, but better safe than sorry. So we also have some stuff. So let's put out some to-dos in, and then we'll stop this stream. So what are to-dos? Well, in Visual Studio, the cool thing is that you can add in some to-dos. And what happens is they'll come in your task, they call it. So let's do that. Let's say here, to do, remove hard-coded config to app settings .develop .json. What is it? App settings what's the name of the file? App settings development. And we need to also go through and to do remove Couchbase service and resources when ASP.NET closes. Let's see. And now we can cheat because we can just say, well, go look at my example that I have on how to do that. And we can even grab the line number that is. So we'll put ourselves a little message that says, see this code on that line number. That'll tell us how to fix that. So we're making some notes here. So we want to do those two things. We don't want to forget about those. So we're going to put those into our code. We're going to go in and we're going to go into iUser repository and say to do add find by email for a user profile. That should get us that. Let's see here. There's a couple other things we wanted to clean up. To do and iLogger in case we have issues. We'll add an iLogger into there. And let's see, Couchbase service. I think we already put the iLogger in here, right? We have an iLogger here. We should wrap this in a try catch. To do wrap and try catch. Just like we did there. Remove that console write line. We don't need that anymore. That seems like it's pretty good, folks. We're getting there. All right, I think that's good. I think we have some things that we need to work on next week, but now we have a laundry list of things we want to add. We'll add a new feature next week. We're going to get by email. We'll also add a create option, which we'll get into some commands, and we'll hopefully get all CRUD done next week. That's our goal. It's the we may even do. I don't have one scheduled, but I may do a stream tomorrow, tomorrow morning, just to get myself up and see if we can get this user profile cracked out. Because once that happens, man, it opens the gates for all kinds of crazy other things for us to do. So we can start adding in like the quests and all the other things. So appreciate you guys sticking with me while we went through and got a repository and a service and all those other things up. If you're watching this on demand, check the next video when we get into this more deeper. But thanks for staying late, and I'll talk to you guys on the next stream. Take care. Stay safe.